Hi, I'm Maya from Goodreads and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I've read in the month of October. So if you watched my October TBR, you could have seen that October was my catch-up month, which is basically I used the month to catch up on like the reading challenges I'm participating in and the fantasy bingo challenge and the buzzword reading challenge and all the books that I've put on my TBR but I haven't gotten to yet. So I was fairly successful. I read all but one book from my TBR, which is great, and I read a bit extra, on the side. So overall, I read 10 things. 5 were science fiction books, 2 were paranormal romance books, 2 were fantasy books, and 1 was a horror book. So first I'm going to talk about the 3 books I read to catch up on the Buzzword Reading Challenge. And this is a reading challenge that is created by Kayla from Books and Lala, and basically she gave a list of 12 prompts, one for each month, and so you're supposed to read a book with that prompt in it, and I'm doing my prompts with a sci-fi twist, so basically I'm reading all sci-fi books for that. So I read the book about Joan by Lydia Yuknavich. It's probably Yuknavich. Basically this was for the prompt, a book-related word. So in this story we follow humans who have survived some cataclysmic thing that happened to Earth, and now they live on a space platform above the surface of the Earth, and they all look like basically golems right now because of the stuff that's happened that they did to destroy the Earth. And in this story we follow Christine, who is basically carving the story of Joan on her skin. This is sort of their medium of telling stories and such. She's also participating in this rebellion against the leader of their space platform thing. So Joan is like a mythical character that basically she is a child warrior who has a way of sort of communing with the earth and bringing stuff back to life. I knew that I wasn't really going to like this book, and I was right, because from the sort of premise I could figure out that it was a sort of philosophical book, in which the author just basically spent the entire book hammering into the reader that the meaning of being human is to procreate, because in this world where that the characters have created, they can't really procreate anymore, and the reason why they're the people of the platform are rebelling against their leader is because he's spending most of the time torturing young women, trying to sort of build a reproductive system, build them inside their body. He's basically torturing them, and it's just awful. So this book has some interesting ideas, but overall I wasn't really gripped by the story, and I didn't really, I guess, feel for anybody. But yeah, I mean, and also it's kind of problematic when you figure out who the bad guy is and what the bad guy is doing. But I've read it, so I've filled the prompt. The next book I read was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This was read for the prompt Light or Dark. So basically this is, I think, Blake Crouch's first book. So it's a sci-fi thriller. So in this book we follow a dude who's been kidnapped on his way from work or something, and basically taken to an alternate reality in which he's sort of lauded as the this creator of this like scientific genius who basically found a way to travel into alternate realities. And from then on, he's trying to get back to his family. It's a complicated mess of physics and alternate realities. For a sci-fi thriller, I didn't think it was very thrilling. I basically had the same feeling while I read Recursion. I mean, both, they were very similar, and both have sort of open-ended endings, which I didn't like, because the second half of this book was very unexpected, because it's just, I'm just going to be spoilers, because in the second half, we sort of figure out that all the alternate versions of our character, I think his name was Jason, basically find themselves on same Earth, same version of Earth, and they're all trying to figure out how to kill each other so they can stay with sort of this perfect version of his family. I mean, I guess the original of the character we are following. And it's just went completely insane at some point. So yeah, I read that. And the last book I read for this challenge was Parasite by Mira Grant. This was for the prompt Animals and Creatures, so I sort of relegated they have a people in this book have a tapeworm in their stomachs. So I put that as the creature in this for this prompt. So people in this story have a tapeworm that basically helps them with their health. So it's sort of genetically modified to help them with whatever medical conditions they have, and they, you know, keep them safe and whatnot. So as the story starts, we follow Sally, who was in a very serious accident and was in a coma, and she basically wakes up after, you know, her family basically decides to what do you call that? Kill her, put her off life support. So she wakes up and she's different, and you know, she is basically different. So the consensus was that she's different because of the tapeworm she has in her body. So she's basically learning how to, you know, live again, and she's also being not experimented on, but she's basically under the watchful eye of the company that, you know, created the tapeworm, and for good reasons. There is tension, and there are some jump scares because basically the tapeworm decides that they want to control the humans that they're inside of, and that sort of leads to this investigation of who is human, who is a tapeworm, or, you know, who's like a plant. My main frustration with Parasite was the main character. So we follow Sally, as I said from before. She was in a coma, she wakes up, and now she's kind of different. And it seemed like she was sort of slow on the uptake, and you always felt like you were smarter than the main character, who couldn't figure out what was happening while, you know, everything was sort of had to be spelled out for her. And it was very frustrating and really lessened my enjoyment of the book. And there are some spoilery things that happened that basically explain why that is. And that revelation makes up for, you know, whatever lackluster feelings I had towards the main character, and definitely makes me want to continue on with the series, but not right away. The next book I'm going to talk about, which wasn't part of the Buzzword Reading Challenge, but it was one of the 5 sci-fi books I read this month, was Salvation Day by Callie Wallace. So basically I had this list of like scary sci-fi books that I wanted to read for like October, which didn't happen at all. But I did read this one. So basically in this one, the Earth is basically divided. We have citizens that are in cities that are full of opportunities and whatnot, and if you make one mistake, you are basically ousted to the desert and the unhospitable parts of the planet. Basically the story starts with a ship transporting people to like their new scholars to their assignments, where they're going to work on their whatever scientific field or area that they have just finished school for. And this transport is taken over by a bunch of rebels who are a bunch of young people under the influence of this, what do you call them? It's not a cult leader, but it's a cult leader. Because so desolate places on Earth, they have sprouted out a couple of cults. And, you know, you're basically supposed to do what the dude says, the leader says, and basically their leader wants their entire group to leave Earth and find refuge on this abandoned research ship, which is abandoned for a reason. And so they can take this ship, be independent, and go find somewhere else to live, because they live in the desert and they can't move to this sort of citizenship of Earth. And so while they do that, there's so much like mistakes being made, and the characters are unlikable. Like, now, from both sides. So the scholars are unlikable, the rebels, whatever, are unlikable. The main two characters that we follow, one, the new scholar, was the person who was on this abandoned ship. His entire family died there, and, you know, so he was like the sole survivor of the whole incident. And he's sort of there, I guess he leads them through the ship, and while they're also trying to figure out what has happened, because he has some trauma from that. And the other character we follow, see, I don't remember anybody's names. The other character we follow is a woman who is basically the leader of the rebels on this transport ship, right? That have taken over the transport ship. And through the entirety of that, her leadership skills are being questioned by the other members of her party, and just everybody is sort of looking down on her because, I don't know, she was, like, I guess, young to lead that, whatever. So basically this was sort of, I think, written as to be like we're following adult characters, but they're basically 20, 21, maybe tops 25, and they're acting like teenagers. And it just, it's like a young adult thing, but it was just, the characters were annoying and unlikable, and that there was just unnecessary conflict between the rebels. They couldn't just get their act together to do their stuff, and it was just, there were some tense moments in this story. There was a possibility of space zombies, but that didn't really go anywhere also, because the reason why this research ship was abandoned was because something happened biologically, and whatever. You just have to figure it out by yourself when you read it. The unlikable characters lessened the enjoyment for me. So, I wasn't really overall invested in the story. In the middle of this story, now there's like an alien threat that's happening. Anyway, it's a mess, and I just, I read it and it was fine. Then the best sci-fi story I read this month was The Fated Sky by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is book 2 in the Lady Astronaut series. Basically, this is a alternate history science fiction series. Basically, during the 50s and 60s, I don't know, a meteor hit Earth, basically destroyed DC, and started this climate change that will soon destroy all life on Earth. So the characters in our story are trying to find a way to not jumpstart, but basically advance their space program enough so that they can colonize Earth, colonize Mars, right? So in the first story, we sort of we follow the beginnings of this space program and what they're trying to do, and the lady astronaut, so Dr. Alma, last name escapes me, basically becomes sort of the spokesperson for this program. She's a mathematician, a scientist. She's also a pilot. She basically flew planes during the Second World War, and she's using her knowledge to participate in the space program. And now, because it's the 50s and the 60s, she's also fighting for, the rights of women and the treatment of women, so they will be taken seriously enough to participate in this, humongous project. In the second book, our group of astronauts are traveling towards Mars to figure out if they can do it, and to start a colony on Mars. And basically we follow them on their journey there. Now, this story was different than the first one in a way that it dealt more with various human rights issues that were in that era. So you had like racism, you had, of course, misogyny, dealing with mental health, how oh my god, so many things, and the amount of uncomfortable characters that our Alma had to have with the various members of her crew, and because she was sort of, how white people are very well-meaning and trying to help people of color, and it basically backfires. That's basically the entire book. The amount of uncomfortable conversations she had to have because of her, almost general sort of characteristics, and the way she was. It was just, I usually don't like those, but this was very entertaining and very enlightening. It definitely makes you think about how you're acting in certain situations, and what makes you think what you would want to do and how you would react if you were in the same position. And it was fascinating and a really, really enjoyable read. Now let's go through the 2 paranormal romances that I've read this month. I read Titan by Gillian Graves. So this story was mentioned by one of the romance booktubers that I follow, because the author Gillian Graves has a new book coming out, already has come out in, I think, October, and I wanted to read this one. Okay, we follow Juliana, who is a former child actress. This is important for the plot, that's why it's mentioned everywhere. Basically, she has fallen down on her luck because her mom and her manager have stolen all her money, so she works as a sugar baby. So she, in her work, basically comes across this dude who is being followed by a mysterious character. And the reason that this mysterious character is following the dude that she's on a date with is because he's in possession of this magical artifact. So this mysterious dude who's following the dude that Juliana was on a date with basically arranges a meeting with Juliana as a sugar daddy. They go on their date. They have sex. She wakes up and steals his ring because she's also a kleptomaniac. And the dude turns into a gargoyle. And then you find out that there's gargoyles. He lives with his clan of gargoyles, and they're trying to find this magical artifact for reasons. I don't remember what the reasons were. I think they were protecting the magical artifact at some point, and then everything gets destroyed, and a bunch of the people got killed, and now they want it back. Something like that. So the rest of the story is basically them trying to figure out how to steal this magical artifact. And also they keep having, sex and stuff. So the smut was fine. That part was, was fine and entertaining. The other parts were also whatever. It was fine. I read it, and it just definitely makes you question how a 700-year-old gargoyle knows what a sugar daddy is, and how he's very good at it somehow. Anyway, I read it. It was fun. The second one I read was one that actually Christina sent me. So basically she gets emails or whatnot from Kindle, or she, gets notifications. So she's sent me a couple of stories to check out. And I checked Magic Claimed by Charmaine Ross. This is a reverse harem or white shoes story in which we follow a magical character who is basically spent most of her life being tortured by this evil dude. And because he wants to find out a secret that she doesn't know she actually has. So at one point she is sort of sent on an errand, and during this errand she's captured by this pack of wolf shifters. And she's recognized as the mate of the alpha and his seconds, lieutenants or whatnot. So the three of them, the four of them are basically in this love square, I guess, and she's very hesitant and she doesn't really want to be part of anything because she has trauma for being tortured her entire life, and the wolves are trying basically their best to protect her and to make sure that she stays with them in this whatever awful situations that they're all in, because everyone in this world is sort of everyone who has magic and everyone who's a shifter, because there are many shifters, everyone who's a shifter, they're basically slaves, and they're just trying to survive and topple the whatever evil dude that they have right now. So yeah, it was okay. It was fun. There is a sequel. I'm going to read it because there are dragon shifters in that one, and I want to see what that would look like. And now let's go into the fantasy books that I've read. I have finally finished The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. This is book 2 in the Dandelion series, and basically it is similar but different. So basically this is a epic fantasy in which the author just created this amazing world, and the history of the world, the characters, the gods, the details, everything, mythology, the plots, everything is just fantastic. The sequel is still grand. The characters are still complex and flawed. In this book, we follow the newly appointed leader of the continent. We meet him in the first book, and his family, and how he basically fucks it up. I mean, not him, but his wives, because he had to have wives for reasons from the first book. Basically, one of his wives, the first one, is very scared that her son will not become the heir, because he's not as close to his father as his son from the second wife. So she basically starts this course of events that weakens the kingdom, the empire, and just throws it into turmoil and insecurity. And then they're basically invaded by a bunch of barbarians from sort of far away. And yeah, it's grand, it's epic. The author just wrote this fantastic book. I think I gave it 4.5 stars because the first half was kind of slow. When the whole, destabilizing of the empire was happening, that was kind of slow. But the second half is just amazing because so many themes. I mean, there is like a part where the people from this empire went exploring a bunch of years ago, and they found these barbarians and basically colonized them. And they were like, oh, look at these poor simpletons. Let's teach them stuff in our ways. But the barbarian leader was so smart and so clever. He was like, just pretend you're dumb, and we're going to take them over. And he did. And it was so fantastic. It was so great. And then he basically used that knowledge and just came back and invaded them. And it was so awesome. It was great. My biggest problem was, when characters are unlikable and when they make stupid decisions, it is frustrating. And it's frustrating to read, and it definitely lessens my enjoyment of the book. And I was kind of, after finishing this, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to continue. I love it. It's well written. It's great. But, you know, it's humongous. Now, this thing has like 850 pages. And it's humongous. And it takes a long time to read. But the only reason I'm going to continue with the third book is just to see how the wife and her stupid son are going to get their comeuppance. Because that happens. And it's going to be glorious. And I'm, at some point, probably in May, when the new Asian Readathon is going to happen, I'm going to get to the third one. Then I read A Destiny of Dragons by T.J. Klune. This is book 2 in the Tales of Verania series. Basically, it's that ridiculous fantasy adventure story with LGBTQ plus romance that is just ridiculous. Basically, we follow Sam of the Wilds. He's like a wizard apprentice. And in the first book, he's basically trying to save the prince. And now in the second book, basically his long-lost grandmother from her mother's side, who is like a gypsy, comes to the kingdom. She's very powerful and whatnot, and basically upheavals his life because she tells him, first of all, that his boyfriend is not his cornerstone, which is basically anchor to his magic, that makes his magic better and steadier and makes him more powerful. Then she tells him that that's some dude from her village, and she basically brings him, and they're supposed to like get together or whatnot. I guess that was supposed to create angst between the characters, but that didn't happen. At least in my opinion, it wasn't really well done. Then she tells him that basically his mentor lied to him his entire life because like he knew who he was. He wasn't like discovered like you would think in the first book, and there's like this dark secret that he's holding that's connected to this dragony thing and the evil wizard that they're all basically fighting against and whatnot. It was sort of similar to this one. Basically the plot was that Sam goes and finds a dragon because his grandma told him to, because he needs dragons to fight this evil wizard too. I think I enjoyed the first one better because there was this underlying angst between Sam and Ryan, like his boyfriend in the second one, which was missing from this part. This was in this one. I think the author tried to sort of create some angst, but it didn't really work for me. And it seemed a bit extra, I guess, than the previous one, or I guess I wasn't in the correct mood for that one. So I think I gave it 3 stars. I mean, it was still fun, but I'm not running to read the sequel. I will at some point, but not right away. And finally, let's talk about the horror book I read. I finished Full Throttle by Joe Hill. This is it's a short story collection. Joe Hill is a horror writer, so most of these stories are horror, and they were really, really good. I gave this collection 4 stars. The stories are varied. Some are not scary. Some are basically have shocking endings. And there are elements of everything. So you have elements of science fiction, fairy tales, mystery, crime, and whatnot. Just a varied collection. There's one, Tall Grass, was made into a Netflix movie, which was kind of creepy. There's this one where in the futuristic sort of version of Earth, basically a girl, I guess, uses a android companion to have a fun day, and then ends in a very shocking way. I thought that one was my favorite. There's one with a time traveling book, or time traveling library, which was really interesting. I just a really, really interesting collection of stories. I really enjoyed them, and I'm glad I finally got to it and finished. It took me a day to finish it, and I was like halfway through, and it was just so, when I finished I was like, that's so stupid, they could have done this months ago. So yeah, I finished it and it was really great. So if you are here at the end of this long ass video, thank you so much. So these were all the books that I've read in October. If you have read any of them, please do share so down below in the comments if you want to share your thoughts. If you agree or disagree with me on these stories, please do. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Like this video if you did. There are some links in the description box for you to check out. And that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!